Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. I apologize for the very impromptu live stream, and I apologize for myself being quite a little bit disheveled than I usually am. But I really didn't want to miss covering this, and I really wanted to cover this as soon as possible. And since I cannot cover it later today, I'm covering it now. Ladies and gentlemen, we finally have actual confirmation from Apple about an upcoming Apple event that isn't WWDC, and that event is happening on May 7th, and this event is called Let Loose, though you cannot always tell based on Apple's previews on their website. Now, what is very, very apparent on that website is the fact that this will have something related to the Apple Pencil, and in fact that animation that you see here is subject to change depending on when you actually click on it. So it's basically, I guess, about creativity. Maybe that's what also Let Loose means. I still find it weird that Let Loose isn't always written under that, but you can see in my thumbnail how it looks with the Let Loose title. Now, it's not something that is subtle here, right? Sometimes we speculate, like, based on the colors, what does that mean? And I mean, we do have like green, yellow, orange, blue, purple. Ifat, welcome to the stream. Welcome to whoever is watching. Maybe those are like the colors of like an upcoming iPad Air. Again, it's always hard to tell because Apple's marketing department is deeply in the know of what happens, but that doesn't mean that every promotional image is deeply based on what they know, right? What we do have here is the Apple Pencil. Now, we don't have that much detail about it. It seems to be roughly of the same shape as the current Apple Pencil. We have had rumors about an Apple Pencil that would work with Apple Vision Pro, so that would be quite an interesting change. And just in general, maybe optimized it even further for lower latency on like an OLED panel. There's basically subtle changes that Apple could enact. Apple could like change the double tap input that you all know, right? When you use your Apple Pencil 2 as you currently is, and you tap here, then it basically gives you a secondary function which you can map depending on the app. That's cool. Maybe Apple would have even more functionality baked into it. But obviously right here we don't see like anything about a new iPad, new Macs, new Apple Silicon processors. So what we do have is some colors that might mean a lot, might not mean a lot, and we do have the Apple Pencil. Ifat, they might add different colors for the Apple Pencil. I don't know, man. Just that white is so iconic, even without like looking greatly at the shape, right, of the pencil that the hand holds here. You can just tell from how white it is that this is like an AirPod style accessory, right? Basically that white from Apple is pretty iconic. People have complained for years about potentially getting different colors for certain accessories. AirPods, like the regular ones, not the Max, being always at the forefront, and AirPods Pro. But alas, we basically never get something like this. Sometimes stuff like the Magic Keyboard gets like color choices, but usually those color choices are then limited to black and white. So it's not like we get a ton. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the confirmation for an Apple event. I am repeating it. This is not a drill. This is a big public service announcement, basically. It's on May 7th. It's at 7 a.m. Pacific time, so it's at an earlier time, depending, obviously, from your perspective, but for most of the world, it's earlier. Than it usually is, which I've actually made sure that I'm free that afternoon, because for me, I believe it's 4 p.m. In Germany. So I will be live streaming that event. I will be having like a half an hour or more like pre-stream where we discuss what is likely to happen. I will have like a half an hour or longer after stream so we can discuss what just happened. And of course, during that event, because it's Apple, I cannot stream the actual event, but I will be streaming my reaction to you guys. So basically this is what we have directly from Apple. So the let loose title, some colors for the Apple logo, and an Apple Pencil. Now if you look here, we also have, I don't know, swirly lines. Guys, give me something. Maybe some of you who are very creative types, what this means. For now, I'll just cheer you with the great news. Because I couldn't tell you what any of this means. Like, I mean, it's drawn, right? And this is kind of how you have like tilt and pressure adjustment on the Apple Pencil, right? But we already have had that since the first Apple Pencil. And Jamie Ibrahim also joining us, a long-term supporter of this channel. I think they will reveal new iPad Airs, iPad Pros. Guys, should I tell you that Apple technically does not believe in something like iPads or iPad Airs or iPhones or iPhone Pros. They believe in calling it iPad, iPad Air, like even in plural. And then you should say something like iPad Air models, right? It's stupid, it's borderline schizophrenic, but I've read that from like their marketing thing. Like I believe Phil Schiller said something about that years ago. So according to you, we're seeing iPad Air, iPad Pro models, iPad Mini. Interesting. I didn't think about iPad Mini. So that they discontinued the Pencil 2. Yeah, I think that it's very likely that Apple Pencil 3 is a direct successor to Pencil 2, and it basically like replaces it, because it would create a very, very chaotic lineup of Apple Pencils if like Pencil 2 and Pencil 3 are supposed to coexist. But Jamie, you're putting me on actually a good path. We have covered what you can see on the Apple website. Let's cover what we see, and thankfully a big thanks goes out to Chance Miller from 9 to 5 Mac, who are very, very quick in obviously knowing that such events happen, but also like giving us small summaries. They've actually even shown all the different like Apple logos for this event that you can see here. This is why I'm trying to tell you guys, it's really hard to predict, especially when you have so many different versions to like base any kind of speculation on. This seems to be roughly the main one, right? The one with the Apple Pencil. It's also obviously the one that is the most like it's the most direct, right? I mean, it literally has an Apple Pencil in it. The fact that there are so many different modes with which it like something is drawn might suggest that we would get an Apple Pencil that has like maybe different pencil tips, right? So to make it feel more like a brush, more like a proper pencil, right? So all the kind of drawing utensils that come to your mind, but not to my stupid mind right now. A magic marker, right? I'm so fucking stupid. But yeah, so this would be kind of my speculation based on what you see here. It doesn't obviously tell us that much, but we have had a ton of rumors in the past, and I've covered a lot of them. So let's just get into some of it. Let's see how 95 Mac summarizes it. Now, with the iPad Air, we are supposedly getting an updated design. We don't know if iPad Air will just continue where the current one is and use that to its advantage to basically be the cheaper iPad Pro alternative, or if the iPad Air maybe follows a redesign similar with the iPad Pro, so it becomes more landscape oriented. We don't know, but what we pretty much know is that there will be a 12.9-inch iPad Air, and just recently we have talked about the 12.9-inch iPad Air basically inheriting the mini LED from the current iPad Pro. which would give it high brightness, high contrast, great HDR functionality, much deeper blacks, and because some areas can be turned off entirely, it would also be very power efficient. We don't know if getting mini LED also means it gets promotion from the iPad Pro. For now, it's not confirmed in any way, but this rumor is being touted by Ross Young, who has a credible track record, not a perfect track record, mind you, anymore, but still a decent one. Jamie Abraham, Tim Cook just posted a teaser on his account. I assume you mean Twitter, right? Let me just briefly see. Tim Cook. I'll check it on my iPad first. Yeah, it's basically the same with all those kind of different Apple logos, like changing from one to another, which I would believe that this basically suggests that there are different modes, like for the Apple Pencil. But hey, Tim Cook tweeting, that's also a little bit new, right? Now, iPad Air is supposedly getting new camera. Again, how much that matters to you is up to you. Now, we don't know, and I honestly don't know what why this is covered this way, but supposedly the new iPad Air would not be getting support for a new Magic Keyboard. That would be just for the iPad Pro. I don't know. I honestly think that just logistically it makes a lot of sense for Apple to give the iPad Air and the iPad Pro the same Magic Keyboard support, the same Apple Pencil 3 support, but maybe the design of the iPad Pro is so new, so different, maybe even so expensive that Apple is just happy to keep selling you a first generation Magic Keyboard. Maybe they reduce pricing by $50 or something like that, and then the iPad Pro gets a Magic Keyboard 2. Again, we can only speculate. Stuff will be oriented basically more in landscape versus the traditional more portrait style orientation of iPad, and it will be getting the M2 processor, so nothing big here, at least from the more confirmed stuff suggests it's not quite a huge change, but maybe it goes more hand in hand with the iPad Pro than we expected. There's always some last minute stuff that gets leaked. Again, that mini LED rumor, we've only gotten to know that a couple of days ago, basically, thanks to Ross Young, and before that we universally expected it to have just a standard LCD panel. So you never know. We might get some rumors that maybe in the next couple of days, maybe Mark Gurman tells us, because Mark Gurman actually gets very precise on the weekend before an event, and maybe he will tell us about iPad Air is actually a bigger change than you think, right? So let's see how that plays out. There isn't that much, though, I think, hyper excitement for the iPad Air, because a lot of what the iPad Air will get better at, right, like a mini LED screen potentially, like getting a new 12.9-inch model, that has of course existed on the iPad Pro for a while. So basically this is just trickle down economics, so to speak, and the iPad Air gets what was good enough for the iPad Pro for quite a while. But that obviously is not everything, because there is a lot to talk about with the iPad Pro. Now, I've covered this time and time again. I've said time and time again that the new OLED iPad Pro is one of my most anticipated Apple products in recent memory, and that has little to do with it's an M3 chip, it's a redesign, it's OLED. To me, I just love iPad, and I love when there's a big change and it's just all those things combined. Now, I have an M1 iPad Pro with 5G, mini LED, enough storage, at least for me. 256 gigabytes on an iPad is enough for me. So I'm probably not upgrading to the new iPad Pro, but I'll just be super duper excited to cover it. I would consider maybe buying it and then owning it for 2 weeks and sending it back to Apple eventually, just so I can check out that OLED screen to see if there are noticeable performance gains. But let's get into detail. So again, big thank you for 9to5Mac for those kinds of summaries. Usually I would create like my little sheet here, my note, where I summarize what I believe in, what is likely, what isn't, but I don't think it's very necessary, especially since I also expect us to be covering this throughout this week, and then we're just like another week away. So for one, iPad Pros are pretty much 100% switching to OLED, and it's not just any kind of OLED, because if you look at, for example, at the Galaxy Tab series from Samsung, OLED screens on tablets are nothing new. But this is a very new type of OLED panel. It is a double layer OLED, which makes it more expensive and more difficult to build, but from everything that we have gotten to know about this technology, it will make it more efficient than traditional OLED panels. It will make it brighter than OLED panels, which is very necessary given that Apple's current mini LED solution is incredibly bright, something you really cannot say about like OLED panels on other tablets. So it's very much necessary for Apple to use some special OLED so that they don't fall behind their own solution. Now, in one way, they will definitely solve something from the mini LED, and that is blooming, because blooming on mini LED exists because you have like a dark background and then something bright happening on it, but the local dimming zones are not small enough to just illuminate that small bright object that is shown on the screen. Instead, it creates like a shimmer of light, a bloom, so to speak, around it. And obviously, the smaller the object, the disproportionately larger the blooming, because you cannot make the local dimming zones, even if there are quite a few on the iPad, over 2000, smaller in retrospect. While OLED has pixel level brightness, and that means it has perfect contrast, it has perfect blacks from pixel to pixel, and that means it's even more efficient, like depending obviously on the exact OLED type. If you can turn off a lot more of the screen, for example, if you have something that is basically completely black and then just a little bit on white text on it or something like that. OLED is therefore also great at contrast, like basically to the pixel perfect. OLED has faster response times. Sami Buka, hello. I don't think I've ever seen you join us live. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the channel, my friend. And faster response times, for example, are really good for gaming, but also just for a smoother experience while scrolling. Guys, I apologize for all the noise coming from the outside. I cannot change that. This is a busy time, basically, for the city at 5 p.m. So yeah, this is what I can do in terms of noise reduction. Unfortunately, not more. Basically, OLED is better in every way except for brightness, which seems to be getting fixed with that new double layer technology, and it has lower longevity than a mini LED or standard LCD screen because of the organic nature of OLED, right? That's what the O stands for. Basically, its pixels have a shorter like survival time, and basically that double layer panel would also improve that. It could probably not fully solve it, but it would reduce the risk of burn-in, which, as you know, is the biggest risk for OLED, and also with lower burn-in rate also comes a generally higher longevity. Sami Buka, another event already. What do you mean already? We haven't had a new event for quite a while, and I mean, you could say it's like, well, WWDC has been announced like not too long ago, but WWDC is happening in June, and I believe this event was slated for April or maybe even late March, but then had to be postponed because of probably yield issues on that OLED panel. But yeah, and now it's basically happening a month before WWDC. I would expect for us to see maybe some exclusive iPadOS stuff. This has happened before when Apple introduced the original Magic Keyboard, the way you interact with keyboard and mouse controls in iPad OS change drastically. So maybe we'll see something like that, and new accessories. You basically want an event for something like this. You don't want this to just be like a press event, a press release, because now you're like really downplaying the fact that this is a really like from the ground up new iPad Pro in so many ways. And given that we haven't had a new iPad for the entirety of 2023, we're kind of overdue, like getting some light shine on OLED on the M3 OLED iPad Pro. I think it has enough new stuff for us to be excited. Continuing with what we can be excited for is the M3 chip. Now, in my last stream, I've covered the possibility of the iPad Pro. I did this based on a reaction to a MaxTech video saying that we might get an M4 based iPad Pro at WWDC. However, given that we are seeing it in May, given very likely that this is a device postponed from April, given that I don't believe M3 at TSMC is even remotely production ready, like for mass devices, I fully believe that it will just get the regular M3 chip. It would be cool if it was M4, but to me, everything suggests it will be the M3 processor, the one we know from the MacBooks, which means it would also probably keep the same RAM configurations at 8 and 16 gigabytes, though I do suspect that we might be going up to 256 gigabytes of base storage. I'll be covering that when we'll be talking about the price itself. So M3, nothing like too surprising here. It's a 3 nanometer chip. It's more efficient than M2, but it also has like more capabilities, faster clock speeds. It supports hardware accelerated ray tracing and stuff like that. So in theory, it can actually use more power than the M2. I'm pretty sure that Apple will balance that somehow in software, so we don't see like a constantly overheating processor in an iPad. Thus far, they have done a very good job in both the M1 and the M2 iPad Pro, so I don't see why that would change. Except for this, which is, this device is supposedly being much thinner than the current one, which is already ridiculously thin. Now, it's not too surprising, honestly, given that Samsung's tablets are also ridiculously thin. Like, OLED is not just thinner than LCD, obviously, but with how everything Apple designs and engineers stuff, they just like making everything as thin as possible. Current iPad Pros, the 11-inch version is 5.9 millimeter thick, and the bigger iPad is 6.4 millimeter thick, and now they're both being basically 5 millimeter, exactly 5 millimeter for the 12.9 inch iPad Pro, the new one, and 5.1 millimeters for the 11-inch iPad Pro. So I hope they don't reduce battery capacity unless that OLED panel is really ridiculously more efficient. But given just how much power like the M3 draws, and if you're getting an iPad with like 5G capabilities, I just would hope that we are getting at least the same battery capacity. I hope no reduction in cooling capabilities of the device. iPads are usually pretty good at cooling because they're one large continuous aluminum surface and the chip is positioned rather in the center, so that's pretty good for you to also hold it very comfortably. The speakers are always amazing. We currently have a quad speaker system. Hope that doesn't suffer from getting thinner or anything like that, but basically we're getting a new design similar to what I said also with the iPad Air. This will be a more landscape oriented device. Now we don't know how Apple will migrate the camera from here to here, given that this is where the Apple Pencil usually connects, but since we're also expecting a new Magic Keyboard, we might see like a new connection mechanism. So maybe Apple will be connecting the Apple Pencil in some other way. Samsung currently connects it like on the back of their device. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe Apple would like move the Apple Pencil down there if it's still like a floating design. But we'll be talking about the Apple Pencil a little bit later on as well. As what we are still covering the Magic Keyboard. There isn't that much crazy stuff to add. A lot of the stuff we know about the Magic Keyboard, like the new one, comes from Mark Gurman. So thank you, Mark Gurman. He says that this will supposedly that the Magic Keyboard will make the iPad Pro look more like a laptop and include a sturdier frame with aluminum. Now, to anybody who knows how already heavy the Magic Keyboard is, that doesn't actually sound like that great of news. Supposedly we're also getting a larger trackpad on it, maybe a function road, though that hasn't been rumored. We have one USB-C port already on the Magic Keyboard. Maybe we're getting another one, or maybe just one with a lot more throughput. The current one is for charging, not really for fast data transfer. And it might get more expensive, which brings us to one of the last points, which is that the iPad Pro is largely rumored to get a higher price tag. Now, the rumors that it would be $1,500 for the 11-inch version and $1,800 for like the 12.9-inch version, I think those rumors are pretty much debunked at this point. Just for context, this would be basically like doubling the price almost for the 11-inch version. This would be like an almost 70% uptick in the base price for the 12.9-inch version. That just makes no sense. Some speculation now show that the 11-inch version might be around $1,000 and that the 12.9-inch version could be like $1,299. So we would be getting like a $200 price increase. My speculation is if we are getting a $300 price increase, then it definitely would also come with an increase of the base storage from 128 to 256 gigabytes. If we're getting an only price increase of $200, then I could see it still being 128 gigabytes of base storage, but I think that 128 gigabytes, similar to 256 gigabytes on the Mac, just starts holding back people from properly utilizing the iPad. So I think just a slightly higher base price but with more storage makes more sense for Apple than trying to push the price artificially down and then create a model that most people probably don't want. They did something similar actually with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, where they just removed the 128 gigabyte version and just kept the base price of the 256 gigabyte version from the 14 Pro Max, and basically said, oh, there's no effective price increase. Basically the base price is up, but if you were previously in the market for a 256 gigabyte model, that one is still the same price. And I think that Apple could say here, well, it looks like a $200 or $300 price increase, but in reality it's only $100 or $200 if you consider that you are getting more storage in the base configuration. That's at least kind of how I see it. I think that Apple would be insane to charge anything close to the prices that are rumored here, unless those configurations are somehow like the 512 gigabyte versions, maybe even 1 terabyte. So yeah, basically a redesigned iPad Pro, more landscape oriented, with a new Magic Keyboard to boot that would make it feel more like a MacBook. It will also be getting the power of the current MacBooks in the form of the M3 chip. It will be getting likely Apple's best screen ever, a double layer OLED screen with higher efficiency, higher brightness than you traditionally expect from OLEDs. This would also be an LTPS screen, which means it would have variable refresh rate, so it will definitely have promotion capabilities, which obviously is very good both for efficiency and for a smooth UI experience. And you're getting all of this at a premium, but we don't know at how much of a premium. So basically, a new iPad Air is very likely. Don't know if Apple will actually spend that much time on it. A new iPad Pro is basically 100% the focus. I believe if they only were introducing the iPad Air, then we wouldn't even be getting an event. Then I think it would be just a press event. A Magic Keyboard as a new major accessory. I also believe we might see an iPad Mini 7. Though again, this hasn't been rumored very recently, or would it be an iPad Mini 6 actually? 15th of April. So with the iPad Mini 7, we are basically talking about two major changes. Supposedly it's like keeping, okay, this website just randomly doesn't work, and everything that I'm searching for is German because I'm still too stupid to change that. No, where's the your settings? This is so weird, guys, because I specifically always have like English on, but Google then still does search like in German because it knows I'm in German. This is why I freaking hate the fact that Google even knows my location, because it just doesn't help me. iPad Mini, A7 Pro. It's all chip detail, right? So this is an older rumor, and I've covered this in like in a previous stream, including a stream that speculated about the possibility of an M4 based iPad Pro. Basically, we have a leak that shows a lot of Apple devices with the code numbers for the processors that they're getting, and supposedly the 11th gen iPad would be getting an A14 chip. No changes basically here, unfortunately, unless the idea basically is that an 11th generation iPad is both a replacement for the 10th gen iPad and the 9th gen iPad, at which point it might be like cheaper than the 10th gen iPad was. Then the M2 for the iPad Air. Then I've covered in previous streams the discrepancy between like the code names for M3 and M4 for the iPad Pro. But as I've pointed out before, I believe now that the iPad Pro is coming with an M3, and the iPad Mini is likely getting the chip from the current iPhone 15 Pros, the A17 chip. For a long time, it was rumored that the iPad Mini would just be moving from A15 to A17. From A15 to A16, but now that it's been basically like missing in action for such a long time, I kind of wouldn't put it past Apple to give us an A17 chip. So that would be a big improvement over the A15. But beyond that, we're supposedly only seeing like a small reorientation of the screen, so it fixes like the jelly scrolling issue that people have complained about. But most likely iPad Mini is not getting mini LED or ProMotion or OLED. It will just be a continuation of the iPad Mini that we know, that some of us love. It will be coming still in Wi-Fi and cellular configurations. It will basically be like a cheaper version of the iPad Air, very similar in spec points, but instead of like an M2 chip, it would get A17. Makes sense. Obviously, iPad Mini doesn't have the battery or cooling to handle an M series processor, and it's getting like the most efficient, most modern A-series chip currently available. Again, don't know if everything will show up there. We haven't had any rumors really about like an 11th generation iPad for quite a while beyond this, and what else could be changing there. We've also had rumors about like potentially that what we see here might even be like a HomePod with a display, which would be cool. Maybe something like that could show up as well, but I'm not speculating on this right now because we just haven't heard anything, and I don't like making up stuff. I like discussing stuff, I like analyzing stuff. I don't really like taking the faintest of rumors and going too deep into them, right? So basically on the low end we would be getting most likely the iPad mini, not even like an 11th gen iPad. Maybe that would follow sometime later this year. At that point I would hope it would have something newer than A14, but again, it's the cheapest iPad. You never know. Like, Apple still sells the 9th generation iPad, so you know that they really don't care that much. So it would start the lineup with an iPad mini with an A17 chip. Most likely, I believe it wouldn't be an A17 Pro. So we might see like one GPU core disabled. But most likely what I expect to happen is that it wouldn't have 8 gigabytes of memory from the iPhone, but it would have just 6 gigabytes. Currently, the iPad mini has 4 gigabytes, so that would still be an improvement for it. And then the M2 iPad Air would follow, basically inheriting a lot of specifications from the current M2 iPad Pro. And then after that we would be seeing like the premium version, the M3 iPad Pro, with its new screen, new design, new accessories. And speaking of accessories, there's one major one that we've talked about, but we haven't yet gone into detail, and that is thank you Mac Rumors for doing for having everything at the ready, which is that the Apple Pencil 3 is likely, or like at least according to this, might get like Apple Vision Pro support. So you would be basically drawing mid-air, it would be synchronized with your Vision Pro, so it would give you even more precision in everything from drawing to potentially interacting with the overall operating system. But you never know, Apple can be very picky about that stuff. If you actually have an Apple Pencil, you know that it doesn't do in iPadOS all the things that your fingers do. So Apple can be very, very particular about stuff like that. Guys, we have quite a few people watching. Please let me know. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you think that some of it is far-fetched? Do you think that I'm not giving enough credence to the idea of an M4 iPad Pro? Do you think I'm way too optimistic about the iPad Pro's pricing, about it still being maybe $1,500 or $1,800? Do you believe that? Will the Apple Pencil now cost you $150 or something like that? So basically, the Apple Pencil has been rumored to be getting an update for quite a while. The current one we have right now is from 2018, so it's definitely overdue also some updates in just like its Bluetooth specifications. There are also some rumors that it would be getting integration with Find My. Don't know how relevant that actually is, but hey, if it doesn't cost Apple too much, maybe they can use like the ultra wideband chip for something else, and Bluetooth is already in there. So that would be cool. Don't know how necessary it is. And we've also heard rumors from quite a while ago. I believe that even like Twitter leakers like Majin Buu talked about it quite a while ago, that we would have like replaceable Apple Pencils and pencil tips, and those tips would basically be then giving you a different style of interaction. Basically, some of it would make it feel more like drawing with a regular pen or pencil on paper, right? Or maybe one would even feel like closer to a brush. Maybe Apple could give you even more like precision in like pressure and tilt sensitivity, but again, we haven't had that much to talk about. N9R, yeah, I believe you're also new to the stream and the chat. Very welcome. I think iPad Pro 11 is from $11.99 to $12.99 and $14.99 for the 13-inch. Okay, so you definitely believe it will be, would that be cheaper than the rumors, but you're still believing in quite a large price increase, because what is the current price of the smaller iPad Pro, right? It's $800, isn't it? Yeah, it's $799 with 120. Well, I definitely would believe that at your prices, the base storage is moving up. So let's just even take the higher price point, right? At that point, it would go up from, let's say, $900 for the 256 gigabytes to your speculation would be $1199, which is a $300 price increase, or even $1299, which would be a $400 price increase. And then we would be seeing something similar percentage-wise for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. TA Tech, hey there, new subscriber, very welcome. As I've pointed out in my last stream, we have reached 100k subscribers on this channel. I welcome each and every one of you. This is primarily a live stream channel, but I do make smaller videos from time to time. I'll definitely be doing some smaller stuff in the next couple of weeks. I'll just have to make my head clear of what I actually want to make. So welcome Sami Buka, welcome 9R, welcome TA Tack, and welcome all the old guard like Ifat, Jamie Ibrahim. You guys don't have the slightest of idea how much I appreciate you. To anybody who's new and doesn't have done all the YouTube jazz, as I call it, which is subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, please consider doing so if you're actually enjoying it. Please, of course, consider supporting this channel directly. You can find my Patreon link in the description of this channel, or while I am live and you have some extra cash, it's not necessary, but it would be very much appreciated. Feel free to send a super chat or a super sticker. So all support is very much appreciated. Just if you join me on Twitter so we can have discussions over there, that alone would be amazing. Yeah, basically 9R has speculated that their price expectations would be somewhere between what I would expect. Where am I here? Which I have said that I expect, for example, for the 11-inch iPad to be moving to either $999 or $1099, and the 12.9 version I expect to be moving either to $12.99 or maybe to $13.99. It's hard to predict stuff like that a little bit because it depends on if there is some stuff that we don't expect. I've said, like, for example, none of us expected like the iPad to get like LiDAR scanners, right? And dual cameras on the back. Now we can argue how necessary those things are and how potentially outdated those cameras on the back are at this point, but all of this adds money, all of this adds to like some logistical and manufacturing complexity. So maybe Apple gives it like some kind of revolutionary freaking camera on the back with support for spatial video, right? I mean, it already has two cameras, just make them a little better, use some of the LiDAR data, and boom, you have an iPad Pro that captures Apple Vision Pro content. Maybe Apple would have like a brand new layer for the screen, so the Apple Pencil has like half the latency, and somehow this adds like $20-30 to the production cost. Again, I cannot be sure about that. I hope Apple doesn't go too crazy, but yeah, I definitely see a price increase coming. 9R, you can't imagine Apple selling small iPad Pro for, I assume you mean like the prices that I'm saying? But the smaller iPad Pro might, like, you have to understand, it's not a device that is as crucial to Apple's larger strategy as like the 13-inch version. Like, the reason why it's much cheaper now is because it doesn't have mini LED. Now with OLED, obviously those things would be much closer to each other, but now you really are pushing it, because how many people are looking for an 11-inch iPad Pro that is more expensive than the current 13-inch iPad Pro, right? So yeah, again, it's always hard to like predict prices. Prices are also up in the air for like until like the last minute. So again, 9R, thank you for contributing. You're saying, I can't imagine Apple selling small iPad Pro start $14.99. Oh yeah, those high prices, those were always garbage. And if you follow me on Twitter, you can actually see, I believe I bet like $150 or something. If that rumor would be true, that I would be giving $100 or $150 to like a charity of the choice of my subscribers. Obviously, I don't think that I'll be losing that bet, but I'll be gladly giving some money to charity on my own anyway. The pricing can be ridiculous. I mean, don't forget, like even the Apple Pencil itself, right, is $129 at its current pricing. I kind of expect the Apple Pencil to go up to $150. Nainar, you're saying you don't talk English, the reason my words sound weird. Bro, don't worry. Like, now, English isn't my native language, but I do speak it quite well. But I never judge anybody for not properly speaking English or any language. It's a complicated world. Some countries teach you other languages, some don't. Sometimes life intervenes and you don't learn a language as well as you hoped you would. Absolutely no problem. As long as you're here, man, as long as you're interacting, as long as you're contributing to the comment section, it's all good. In fact, it's all great. So yeah, even the Apple Pencil, as I said, I would expect a small price increase, maybe $139. I would kind of expect $149 because it's kind of like a round sum, but also not quite. Like, it's not outrageous like $169 would be. Obviously, anything in like the $200 range would just make it a joke, like kind of like the Apple Pro wheels at that point. But I believe that Apple could go up to $150 and then just say like, well, if you really want just a cheap Apple Pencil, well, get that one for $80, right? You have to connect it via a weird cable and stuff like that. TA Tech, you're asking what languages do I speak? I speak German, I speak Russian, Russian being my native language because I was born in Moldova in Eastern Europe, so I'm not Russian. And I do speak English, and I do speak a little bit of Arabic because of an ex-girlfriend. So it's not much. So 3 languages primarily, unless you count Latin, which I had at school, but I don't remember it. I know some of it because of med school, but not this. Yeah, it's actually interesting, TA Tech. Whom did you ask? Did you ask 9R or me? And of course, there is also the question about the pricing of the Magic Keyboard, which if we check here, I believe it should be right there, right? Well, obviously the Smart Keyboard Folio, I don't recommend you get it. It's quite flimsy. It's not that great. The keyboard itself doesn't feel too good. It's a $179. The Magic Keyboard obviously being $300 currently for the 11-inch version and $350 for the 13-inch version. Now, I would expect prices to stay around the same, maybe move up by $50. Some speculated that we would be hitting like close to the $500 price point, but then it would really need to be a different keyboard, right? It would have to have like more ports and stuff like that, and at that point it would really be subject to criticism because iPadOS isn't macOS. I've always advocated iPadOS should stay separate from macOS. It should give you a different user experience, but in my opinion, you cannot sell like a $500 keyboard with ports and say like, well, but iPadOS is still iPadOS. No, that would be ridiculous. I think Apple could push it to like the $400 price point for the 13-inch version. This is also, by the way, why I advocate for the keyboard to be compatible with the iPad Air, not just the Pro, because I think that would be a good market to sell it to. But we don't know. Like, again, for the Apple Pencil, we've heard a lot of different rumors over the last couple of months, actually years. I've already covered some. For example, one of the more recent ones would be the Apple Vision Pro compatibility. Some older ones include like removable or replaceable Apple Pencil tips. Now you already can obviously remove and replace Apple Pencil tips, but now you would have different types. And what you see here, that bar basically that connects it magnetically to the iPad Pro, iPad Air, iPad Mini, whatever. This does offer you double tap functionality, and we've heard some rumors that maybe it would be like a swipeable area that would expose more than one additional functionality. Again, it all remains to be seen. I cannot promise you which one of those rumors are correct. Obviously, if several of those are correct, like if it gets Find My, Vision Pro support, different kinds of Apple Pencil tips, maybe even 3 types or something included right away, right? And a new way to basically interact with it, then yeah, then I definitely would expect price to go up. Just in general, I also expect it to get better with all the stuff that it does, like further removing reducing latency, giving you even better pressure and tilt recognition. But obviously that is more nerd stuff. I highly believe that the Apple Pencil 2 is already very performant and more than enough for most people. M9R, you're saying, I think you'll go with the iPad Air with M2 chip. It's boring, but price, it's not stupidly high. Yeah. And I can actually do that similarly for the iPad Air, right? Because my suspicion for the iPad Air is actually that it doesn't get a price increase unless it does. And I'll explain it briefly, right? Because the iPad Air is currently, for one, it is colorful, right? But so maybe some of the colors for like the special event are the colors that will be like the iPad Air colors. That happens from time to time. It's not a guarantee, but it's reasonable to expect something like this, I would say. And then the pricing, I've said that 10 times today, I'm sorry. It's 64 gigabytes for $599 or 256 gigabytes for $749. So my suspicion is I would believe we would be going with probably the same base price unless the iPad Air gets promotion. Then my speculations are pretty much out of the way, and I just cannot promise you any like I would then believe it could start at $699 just to account for it having promotion, and just because the price gap to the iPad Pro would be then ridiculously large, and it could incentivize people getting the iPad Air versus the iPad Pro. But I would believe that we are definitely getting 128 gigabytes. Now I do not believe that this would come with a price increase if basically everything stays the same except for it getting a new processor. But if there are some notable changes that for some reason I'm not thinking about, again, there's always something. Bigger camera changes than expected. Maybe it moves from a dual speaker system to a quad speaker system. As I said, ProMotion is kind of a big deal that Apple likes to charge up for. But yeah, I would then expect this to be 128 gigabytes, and maybe we would get rid of 256 entirely and then charge like $250 more for 500 gigabytes or something like that, or we just go from 128 gigabytes for $100 more, which would effectively be a $50 price reduction for this model if the base price stays the same, then from 128 to 256, and then for another 200 to 512. I don't see Apple sticking with 256 gigabytes as maximum storage because it's a little limiting. And for people who don't want to spend crazy iPad Pro money, like 9R in the chat here, I do believe that opening it up to like a 512 gigabyte option could be pretty sensible. You have a 2018 iPad Pro since 2019. You want to upgrade, but iPad Pro 2024 price leaks, it wouldn't make sense. Well, I would have to say though, what are you getting then out of the iPad Pro, right? Because you have to consider now you would be losing promotion, which is, in my opinion, quite a big part of like the user experience of a more premium iPad. So at that point, I would kind of like, if you really feel like upgrading, maybe to an Apple Silicon, like an M series iPad Pro, because that would give you stuff like Stage Manager, and maybe you care about something like that, then I would really recommend just getting a refurbished M1 or M2 iPad Pro. I think if you have like iPad, compare iPad, why iPad, where's refurbished here? iPhone, compare iPhone. Where's Apple's refurbished? Oh wow, it opened up right the correct website. So if you actually look at refurbished for iPads, iPad Air, so obviously you can save a lot of money if you want an older iPad Air, but I doubt it. But here's like an 11-inch iPad Pro, which I don't know which model that is. It's the second generation. No, forget that one. Here, the third generation 11-inch would look how much cheaper it gets then. And this is Apple refurbished pricing. If you go through Amazon and stuff like that, you save a lot of stuff. You're saying you think new iPad Air is the same iPad Air 5th generation, but remove M1, give it M2, double storage, and that's it. And I've actually advertised for that coming to the iPad lineup for quite a while, but it's not quite as simple, because there is also, of course, as we covered, the presence of the 12.9-inch iPad Air, so a new form factor, maybe some design changes to make it more landscape oriented, but that would depend on if it also has support for the new Magic Keyboard and or the new Apple Pencil. And of course, that 12.9-inch iPad would not just be getting the same kind of screen as the smaller model. It supposedly, according to Ross Young, would now be a mini LED panel. At that point, which this is why I wanted to cover actually the pricing for the iPad Air, because at that point we really have to question, well, what would be then the base price for the 13-inch iPad Air? Because obviously the M2 iPad Pro starts at $10.99, so would it be like a $7.99 starting price point? More likely $8.99. I don't think it would be a full 1,000 as a base price, but who knows? You live in Saudi Arabia and you don't have Apple Store. Refurbished still exists in other countries. You go to like an authorized Apple reseller and there should be something there. You buy Apple products with 10 to 20% price hike. Believe me, guy, I live in Europe, so I have a 19% value added tax. I have a currency that is technically more valuable than the US dollar, but like that's not how Apple apparently sees it, with some import and other regulation stuff. So I absolutely feel with you. Believe me, it would be so much better if we are talking everyone like US dollar price. This is why I use it as a reference point, but I know that it varies quite a lot from region to region, from currency to currency, and even in the US it varies based on state to state, based on how many taxes you pay there and stuff like that. But I do largely agree with you that especially for the 11-inch iPad Air, we're looking at double the base storage and a new processor. And the idea why Apple hasn't launched it until now is basically they didn't want something that detracts from the current M2 iPad Pro, but now that the M3 iPad Pro is around the corner, they can now launch it simultaneously. I actually wouldn't be surprised if the iPad Air and even like the iPad Mini had been like design complete and even some models manufactured like for quite a while, and Apple is just waiting to release them simultaneously with the iPad Pro. Maybe we'll have like Apple boxes again that say like basically like, oh, it's created in 2023 but it's being sold in 2024. I kind of agree. You're saying iPhone 15 in Saudi Arabia is like $1,100. Yeah, that's about right for the prices here in Germany. When you actually look at can I not change this to German? Okay, so we go to iPhone pricing, iPhone 15 pricing. Now, the iPhone has actually gotten a little cheaper this generation, but yeah, so the iPhone 15 starts at 949 euros and 950 euro to USD by current rates is $1,000 $1,015. So yeah, there you cannot do much about that, unfortunately. So I sympathize with you. Now, there isn't that much else, that much more than I can add. Obviously, Vision Pro has gotten some like has lost some of its original excitement, but maybe like Apple would also introduce something new for it, some new software feature. Now WWDC is just around the corner, but obviously whenever it introduces like a new accessory, it is an opportunity to also talk about the new product. You're asking if iPad mini is coming at this event. I've actually talked about it before. I don't know if you have missed it. Maybe I closed it here. Yeah, I believe the iPad mini, similar to what you say about the iPad Air, basically getting like double the base storage and a new chip. I believe the same would be true for the iPad mini. If we actually go to the iPad mini as it currently is, right? It's not that surprising. I think most people know it's powered by the A15 chip. It has similar but not the same color options as the iPad Air, so it's basically just a smaller iPad Air. And then it comes at the same base storage at 64 gigabytes, and it's $100 cheaper across the board than the iPad Air. It's $499 and $649 respectively, based on how much storage you get with it. And I believe it's just overdue an upgrade where it fixes jelly scrolling for people who have had that issue before. It gives you 128 gigabytes of base storage, because that's just super duper cheap these days. And then it would result in a reduction of pricing for the 256 gigabyte model, which could then in contrast open up some room for a 512 gigabyte version. Is iPad mini supposed to come in the September event? Hell if I know. Right? Mark Gurman told us we are not getting an iPad event in general, and we are getting one. So you really cannot blame me for having more speculations on what we are supposed to see here. If Mark Gurman has been wrong actually on like the release dates for the iPads for quite some time now. Again, we haven't had actually updated rumors on what is going to power the iPad mini, like that leak, for example, about about the iPad mini getting the A17, right? Before that, we've largely speculated that it would be the A16 chip. And at that time, we've also talked about, well, if it is just getting the A16, maybe it would be coming out last September. But then it was somehow miraculously pushed to the second half of this year, and it's not that significant of an upgrade for us to wait that long. It's not that significant of a change for Apple to wait that long. I don't know, like maybe they're waiting until like the A18 chip is out, so maybe they feel like it devalues the A17 if they put it in the iPad mini, but that is pretty bullshit. They put the A15 in the iPad mini much sooner after the release of the iPhone 13 series than now would be versus the release of the iPhone 15 series. I have no idea, like for the iPad Air, my speculation is the reason why we haven't gotten it yet is because the actual like focus will be the iPad Pro, and the iPad Air cannot get the M2, it cannot maybe even get like mini LED before the iPad Pro gets like OLED, its new design, the M3 chip, right, to keep it still the more pro, the more premium version, right? But then when you actually think about like about the iPad mini really does not compete with the iPad Air or the iPad Pro. It's for a very different use case most of the time, and it has A-series chips, not M-series chips. So maybe Apple felt like giving it A17 while the Air is still on M1 would make it weird in the lineup, but then waiting until September doesn't make sense unless the A17 supply is not good enough. But at that point, if you release it that late, maybe you should release it with an A18 chip instead, because an A18 chip would be built on on the second generation 3nm node. It would be even more efficient. It would have better neural engine capabilities, so you could market it even more with like all the AI stuff that is coming at WWDC. Bro, I have no idea why we haven't yet gotten the iPad mini. I only speculate is we haven't gotten the iPad mini because we haven't gotten the iPad Air, and we haven't gotten the iPad Air because we haven't gotten the iPad Pro. That's kind of my logic. You think iPad Air comes with mini LED screen? If that happens, you're happy? Well, I trust Ross Young. It's not like a blind trust. Again, I covered this, right? But this has come up just a couple of days ago, right? If you go back to my channel, you can find like a previous live stream where I covered this. I think that if it's mini LED at 60 hertz, I think that would still encourage enough people to switch to OLED at 120 hertz. But it would be quite an interesting look. To me, it would suggest that Apple might not really have Apple might not really want to source other like panels for the iPad Air, right? They might just want to like reuse everything they have from the iPad Pro. Maybe they even have like a very long-term agreement with that supplier for mini LED. So they just said, oh, F it, make it a little bit more expensive, but we can reuse the logistics here. We can optimize the price, make it a little bit more premium, which Apple always likes to do anyway. And then at that point, maybe an 11th gen iPad would actually be more premium than we thought before, because as you know, right now, the 10th generation iPad, like, it's a little bit disjointed with like how the Apple Pencil connects and stuff like that. It feels like a very, very non-Apple-y like compromise in order to reach a certain price. So maybe if the iPad Air goes up in price, the iPad Pro goes up in price, and then like the base iPad can also get more premium. Maybe the base iPad returns to its $499 roots, which, as you know, is the original price of the iPad that was introduced in 2010. And then maybe Apple sells like an old base level iPad at $380 or something like that, similar to how they are still keeping the $329 9th generation iPad in the lineup, while we still have a 10th generation iPad at, I believe, $450, right? So we'll go to iPad, that would make it the 9th gen at $329 and the 10th gen at $449. Yeah. But this one, again, I always call out how weird that device is. It's just so close to the iPad Air, but it doesn't have like Apple Silicon. It doesn't have support for Apple Pencil 2. It's just a little weird. If it were like $399, then it would probably be a slam dunk, especially if you're somebody who doesn't want an Apple Pencil at all. But yeah, I don't know. I don't like this product. And I would kind of like this to be $299 officially. I believe $299 is the education price for the 9th gen iPad. But obviously this one is getting old. A13 chip and stuff like that. I believe it has like 3 gigabytes of memory. So it will quickly lose like software support from Apple. So yeah, if you can, buy at least this, but more likely buy an iPad Air. And I know people tend to call out that iPad Pros are overpriced, given that given how limited iPad OS is, but I never agreed with that. I love my iPad Pro. I use it with like a Logitech accessory that unfortunately hasn't aged too well, but the iPad itself has. So let's see what we'll see there. And again, there's so much that could happen. iPad 10, it's same as iPad Air 4th generation. Yeah, it's basically a 4th generation iPad Air, but with some weird compromises. Which I understand, that's how cheaper devices are made. But at that point, I just wonder, like, I've actually heard that it sells pretty well. So maybe that redesign was worth it for Apple. I personally prefer Apple's lineups to be a little cleaner than this. I'm somebody, I don't advocate for like super duper clean lineups. I still want some choice, but once you're getting devices so close to each other in price and functionality, and once you can even sell like refurbished models. Like I would basically to everyone recommend like a 4th generation iPad Air and getting it refurbished or even just like discounted, because it's maybe you can find some not used one over this, even if it's slightly more expensive if you find it. Yeah, so basically we've talked a lot about, guys, shoot me some questions if you have any. Let me know if you vehemently disagree with something. And as I said, if you are new watching this and you are new, please, and enjoying this, of course, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. And if you want to support this channel more directly while I'm live, you can send me a super chat or a super sticker for some small financial help for a part-time YouTuber who does this while finishing med school, or you can support me more long term by subscribing to my Patreon. You can find the link in the description of this channel. Yeah, of course we all want like an OLED iPad Air with like promotion. Like a lot of people have asked for like an iPad Mini Pro, right, that would give you basically all iPad Pro functionality but in an even smaller form factor. It remains to be seen how much of that can trickle down in realistically quickly. Apple could, for example, use a non-double layer OLED for the iPad Mini, maybe making like an 8-inch panel with a traditional OLED screen is pretty viable, and not as viable the larger you go up, right? So Apple might need the double layer OLED for their quality criteria for the iPad Pro. Don't forget that those iPad Pro now also have to compete with previous generation mini LED panels, which is not the case for the iPad Mini, which currently has a standard 60Hz LCD screen. So any kind of OLED, as long as it reaches like around 500 to 600 nits of brightness, wouldn't even have to be like a crazy XDR OLED. It would be an improvement. And if it's an LTPS screen, then Apple would even give it promotion. Doesn't mean that it would be like crazy good to like 1 Hz adjustments like the latest iPhones, but maybe it would have like similar functionality to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, where it goes down to 10 Hz or something like that. So there's a lot of capability. I don't think we'll have to wait until 2054 to get cheaper iPads with OLED. I think that by 2030, we should definitely see some, especially if micro LED becomes a thing on even more premium devices, and then it sort of supplants OLED, and then OLED can move down the line and be a little cheaper and in more affordable devices. Yeah, so basically, like, let loose, guys. Enjoy the event. I'll be covering more about it in the days to come. I'll still be here for like the next 5 minutes to see if you guys have questions or suggestions, but otherwise I'll be wrapping it up slowly. Obviously, Apple Pencil pretty much confirmed, maybe new colors, but again, there's also more stuff like removable Apple Pencil tips potentially, like not removable, they already are removable, but like different choices of Apple Pencil tips, and this is why we have different drawing styles for the Apple logo. I don't know, that's my speculation. But yeah, you never know, basically. And of course, if we are getting an Apple Pencil, means very likely we're getting new iPads, starting with an iPad Air that I believe will be quite good. And basically, my hope is it gets more base storage, it gets M2 versus M1, and then whatever other changes it might have, it remains to be seen. We haven't actually had that much leaked. I think it's very likely it will be compatible with Apple Pencil 3, whether it will be compatible with the latest Magic Keyboard depends on if it gets some of the redesign that the iPad Pro is getting. And speaking of iPad Pro, that one is getting, in my opinion, M3 chip. I've discussed in previous streams the possibility of it being like an M4 chip because of it being like like the secret code number for the chip that is rumored to come for the new iPad Pro doesn't correspond to the M3 chip that we currently have, but it could correspond to a potential like M4. But given that it's coming out in May, 1 month before WWDC, long before N3E from TSMC is like mass production ready, I would just suspect it's getting M3, and M3 wouldn't even be like the main standout. The main standout would be the double layer OLED panel, which over traditional OLEDs on most tablets these days would be like brighter, more efficient, higher longevity, low risks of burn-in, and of course versus its current mini LED competitor or cousin from the current iPad Pro, it wouldn't have blooming, it would have also higher response times, so it would basically be better in almost every way, which also means it would add to a much more expensive iPad. But I've also lined up why I don't believe you should believe that the prices are increasing by like 65 to 100%. That to me would just be weird. You're saying that some people have even like talked about like lineups until 2028. Yeah, but those are always in flux, right? Like sometimes it's like Apple might have plans to bring OLED to like iPad mini, but then the pricing doesn't work out with like how inflation was for the last couple of years, with how demand had spiked during the pandemic but then had come down. You never know what Apple feels like they need to do or what they even can do for like half a decade of predictions, right? They're not the Chinese Communist Party making like 50-year plans. You think iPad Pro will have a third color, and I think it's a dark blue. Dude, that could actually get me to potentially like buy. If we are talking like iPhone 15 Pro Max, like dark titanium blue, that would be something, right? I love the color on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and having an iPad that potentially matches it, that would just be mwah, chef's kiss. Yeah, so that color, ooh, imagine that on an iPad Pro. But again, we haven't heard anything about that. I mean, if we go to this, right, like maybe like that third one could make a point about that, but we always speculate about colors based on colorful like Apple like promo materials for events, and it never, like, sometimes it turns out correct. And I kind of would believe that this one does point towards the colors we could expect on like an iPad Air. Oh, I also forgot there's pink there. And maybe this one would point like, yeah, we would have like dark blue, or maybe it would just be midnight, right? Midnight obviously already existing, and like it's a color that they use for like anodized aluminum, right? So if we look at MacBook Pro, right, maybe they would just go fully black, or no, that is space black. No, what do they call the color right now? Did I just have a brain fart? What do they call this color? 16-inch? I know 16-inch doesn't... Yeah, it's space black. No, I mean the MacBook Air color. Mac... Oh my god, why does my Safari not want to behave? MacBook Air by... Oh yeah, here it is. Right, this is basically the color I kind of would expect from this. Maybe I would think it would be pretty cool, especially since they just announced that this color on the MacBook Air has actually been like refined from its first generation, and now features like fewer, like it's less fingerprinty, basically. So yeah, that would be cool, absolutely. Right, the colors are correct, right? Midnight, Starlight, Space Gray, and silver. Yeah, I still remember it. Though I haven't, I have like a space gray 14-inch MacBook Pro with an M1 Max processor, so I haven't really like thought about getting a new Mac for quite a while, or a new iPad even. And therefore I kind of like, yeah, I remember space gray and silver, but then the other colors, like sometimes, like they blink in and out of my mind. Yeah, so let's return to just what we see here. You see that the logo varies. So I want to remind you guys, 7th of May, May 7th, however you pronounce it, at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Look up what that means for your region. Often when you go to apple.com, it actually like gives you like a change directly to the website that's in your language and for your region. So, and of course you can always add that to your calendar. At that point it obviously corrects for the time zone that you're in. Highly recommend you do so. I will be covering it live, but I will also be covering more stuff in the meantime this week, especially if somebody like Mark Gurman comes out and tells us that there's more to discuss, right? If we go to like just what you can see here, is there anything new? Like sometimes like a leaker like tells us something directly. We have like people selling accessories for a new iPad Air that doesn't yet exist. Okay, that's not it. Yeah, so no new rumors. I'm doing this because during my second to last stream and my stream before that, I actually covered news, and then like an hour later or even during the stream, like Mark Gurman or somebody else had some other leaks, and I just wished I had been able to include them. So yeah, I've done a lot of summarizing. So iPad Air, basically 100%, because it is a cheaper version of iPad Pro. I think it's just important to have it, because at that point the iPad Pro would just look frightening, even if it's not quite as expensive as rumored. And I also believe that at the very least it's getting Apple Pencil 3 support, and the more devices Apple has that like right off the gate support Apple Pencil 3, maybe Apple Pencil 3 is compatible with every device that already supports Apple Pencil 2, but obviously those devices are very likely to already have an Apple Pencil attached to them if a person feels like it. So it just makes sense to release a new iPad Air, make it a little faster, make it a little better value of finally getting rid of the 64GB base storage version, and then focus a lot on the iPad Pro. Now its performance, again, iPad OS is so fast, so smooth, but M3 is even better, has like hardware accelerated ray tracing. Maybe M3 will be getting some onboard like on-device offline AI features at WWDC that the M2 doesn't, which would obviously suck a little for anyone getting an M2 iPad Air or like a refurbished M2 iPad Pro. But you have to kind of deal with that risk. We don't yet know how much back Apple's like offline AI solutions will go. Maybe they will just support the latest generation, maybe down to M2, maybe some of the features will even work on like A14, A15, M1, but you never know. It could start even just with A17 Pro, maybe even M3 with its worse neural engine than the A17 Pro does not get those. I highly doubt it, but you always have to deal with that risk. Of course, OLED being its main appeal, pixel perfect, like contrast, bright, faster response times, no blooming, and versus traditional OLEDs, we're getting something that is brighter, that has better longevity, and all of this in a newly designed package that is more landscape oriented, with a new Magic Keyboard and an even thinner form factor, which I hope doesn't go against its battery life, doesn't go against its like structural rigidity, but it is what it is. We know know that Apple on the iPad cares less about those things, unfortunately, than they do on like the iPhone, that they now made thicker, made out of titanium, so, and previously made out of stainless steel. Hell, I would love to get a titanium iPad Pro, but it actually wouldn't be as good as something, right? Titanium might be more durable than aluminum, but it's also heavier, and it's not as good for thermals, which means if the iPad doesn't get like a vapor chamber heatsink inside of it, then the thermals would definitely struggle if you don't have that huge aluminum chassis that helps dissipate heat. So yeah, we should be grateful for what we currently have. Now, we have had old rumors about a redesign where it would be getting a glass back, supposedly MagSafe on the back. I cannot tell you. Maybe even MagSafe is like charging, but then the question is, would potentially 5mm be even too thin for the current MagSafe solution? This is why I don't really cover it, because it all feels just like too much based on old leaks and rumors, too much based on old speculation and stuff. So yeah, for now, I'll just take it as it is, just deal with the more believable rumors, which, yes, includes like an iPad mini getting an A17 chip, and I hope similar to what I believe will happen with the iPad Air, it would also finally get 128 gigabytes of base storage. Whether or not that iPad mini comes out in 2 weeks, or whether it comes out in September, as was rumored by Mark Gurman, I don't know. I'm covering it because it feels appropriate to cover it here. With those new iPads, we're getting a new Magic Keyboard that will be supposedly more Mac-like, with an aluminum design, maybe larger trackpad and stuff like that. Let's see if that also means it makes it more expensive. And then the Apple Pencil, which obviously is very much confirmed by Apple. As you can see here, an Apple Pencil 3. We don't know what its compatibility would be, what it would mean for like landscape potential camera arrangement, whether it has like some differently positioned magnets or something like that. But for its features, we have had rumors about it supporting Find My. Obviously, after being like years and years later than the Apple Pencil 2, it could also have some technology to further reduce latency, further improve pressure and tilt sensitivity. It could have like tips that are replaceable, similar to the current one, but also get like new pencil tip types, which would make it feel more like a traditional pen or a pencil or a brush or something like that. And it could get Apple Vision Pro support, so you basically draw in the air, which would feel quite magical, I believe. And then the double tap functionality that we have had since the Apple Pencil 2 could be even further improved, maybe with like some swipe up and down mechanism that gives you obviously like a scrollable, not visually scrollable, but you scroll through it, and then it gives you different like different features for drawing and stuff like that. Obviously, Apple Pencil 2 and like M2 iPad Airs have like also the hover functionality, so I assume it would get it, of course. And you never know, sometimes, as we have learned with the hover functionality, sometimes an old Apple Pencil can still learn new tricks. So maybe even Apple Pencil comes out this year and maybe gets some new features eventually down the road with like an M4 iPad Pro. You never know with Apple. That's basically it. Across all of it, some of the discussions remain open about what pricing will Apple target, how quickly will everything release, right? Like a lot of people suspect that the iPad Air would basically come out right away. The iPad Pro would maybe come out 2 weeks later, something like that. That would give it some time for like reviewers to properly process each device individually. It would give consumers more time to get adjusted first to one product than the other. So if you don't care about one, obviously you just focus on the other. And with pricing, I've said I don't believe the extraordinarily high price predictions that were for the most part debunked anyway, but I do believe that some price correction is overdue, some basically going with the inflation, some correcting for that, and of course with all the new tech, a 3nm processor, an OLED panel, a redesign, I believe this will all move the iPad pricing upwards, and maybe with it the pricing for accessories such as the Apple Pencil and the Magic Keyboard. And now that my voice is almost fully gone, I just want to say thank you guys. This was a lovely live stream for me. I really enjoyed having you here. Having new people join is always a blast for me. As I've covered in my last stream, we have reached 100k subscribers. I'm actually awaiting in the next week some kind of response from Google regarding my silver play button potentially, so let's see if that pans out. Beyond that, I'm just looking forward to covering more and more stuff, so if you feel like subscribing, becoming part of this community, I would very much appreciate it. As always, I encourage you guys, even those who did it during the live stream, please watch the video afterwards as well. Please comment on it, please like it, please share it, of course if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to the channel if you feel like following my content in the future. Beyond that, of course you can support me directly while I'm live. You can send me a super chat or a super sticker to support a part-time YouTuber, or if you want to support this channel in the long term, you can find my Patreon link in the description of this channel where you can subscribe. Yes, I will, and with my Patreon link, you will also find my Twitter link. So if you feel like connecting there, feel like sharing ideas there, I interact there quite a lot. I'm tuning down my engagement there a little for like just mental health reasons regarding social media, but for amazing people, I always find at least some time. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for growing this community as much as it has. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see you in the comments as you suggest what I can do better, what I can cover next. And of course, I'll be covering this Apple event in 2 weeks live. So add to your calendars, not just the Apple event, which happens, as I've said time and time again, on May 7th at 7 a.m. Pacific time, but around half an hour before that I'm going live, and about half an hour afterwards I will be staying live to discuss what we just saw, plus minus half an hour on top of it all. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much. See you in the next one. This is Mark Tech, tuning out. This was a blast. The stream was awesome. Give you 2 live long and prosperous here.